Very true.
You know, but the biggest challenge I think we notice in the region again is leaders saying one thing and doing something different. Two, the mentality that I think affected the leaders immediately after independence is still at play. Because at independence, I don't remember who said, someone said that African leaders desire to be big fish in small ponds, rather than being
eating all the small fish,
other than being small fish in lakes.
Okay.
Because I have a feeling that many of them, either because of lack of confidence or whatever psychological negative factors that affect them. Because you see, if you have one regional integrated unit, then many would lose the presidency. I think that affects quite a number of them.
Very true.
They would rather remain in a small country, even if it is struggling economically, than cede some of the powers of sovereignty of a country, cede them to a regional bloc. Okay, have one leadership at the region, even if you no longer have the presidency. I mean, United States of America has got, I think, 52 states. There are governors in those 52 states. They have one president. And you can see how the economy of America is, because of size, because of population, because also of the levels of economic capacity of the people within. So if you have regional blocks, like in the case of East African community, succeed in that regard, because the ultimate was political integration. If you have a well-functioning economy, a well-functioning political system, East Africa with close to 200 million people, and in another 25 years, imagine Uganda alone is going to be 100 million people. So the East African bloc, you'd be talking about 300, 400 million people. That's a huge market.
Huge market.
That would give capacity for a region in many ways. Economic development, political capacity as well, diplomatic capacity as well. Some of our countries are almost, in terms of voice at an international level, in terms of negotiation with the larger economic blocs, are manipulated. Why? Because they are smaller entities, they don't have economic muscle, they don't have any strong political standing, and therefore that weakens us at the level of diplomacy. But many of our leaders seem not to recognize this, or even when they recognize them, they talk about them a lot, but they don't do things in a way that would be able to achieve that end state.
Absolutely. Before we move on from our diplomacy situation and stand as a nation, I wanted to also address the issues of nations and national relations, mention nations and how our relationship is standing as of today. And after that, we shall be moving into economic issues and trade issues and to see how we are standing in that area. Let's look at the situation of Rwanda.
Yes.
Having served as Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, UPDF, and under you had personalities like Paul Kagame, who is the incumbent president of Rwanda.
Yes.
The situation in Rwanda, what does it make of us? The fact that we had an intense relationship that caused the border closure for a very long time, endangering and affecting our trade relations and all sorts of economic returns that we would have made from that, from our neighbors.
Yes.
How would you make of whatever went on?
Again, unfortunately, there has been mismanagement of the relations between the two countries, because in terms of geographical locations, the two countries border each other. So nobody can wish that fact away. Like Uganda borders with a number of other countries. So for any country to develop on a sustained basis, you've got to recognize the fact as it is that you don't choose neighbors. So you have to do everything humanly possible to ensure that there are good relations with all the neighboring countries, and that you go beyond that and work for common objectives that all of you have got to work towards. For example, in the case of Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi, and Tanzania, they have got a common border with the DRC. DRC, the eastern part of DRC, geographically, can only trade through the eastern seaboard. They can only trade through Mombasa and Dar es Salaam. So the countries which border with the Congo would need to work in concert to ensure that there is stability in Congo. Because once there is stability in Congo and there is economic growth in Congo, it would definitely benefit the East African economic bloc. Now, those are strategic issues that would need the leaders to focus on rather than be sucked into petty fights. Because if you fight, that means you are going to divert resources to building your military capabilities. Now, if you are building military capabilities, it means that a number of other areas will be affected. Education will be affected, health will be affected, infrastructure development will be affected, agriculture and others. So any regime really that has got leaders worth the name of being leaders of countries need to focus on the strategic interests of the countries, strategic interests of the region. And therefore, that should be able to make leaders deal with whatever differences there could be. Differences in approach in terms of whatever political systems each country has. They should not overshadow or impede the critical factor of you investing money into areas that are going to uplift your society or your communities. But strange enough, in this part of the world, the whole of Africa, leaders seem to be, in a sense, intoxicated by power. And they end up doing a number of things that you would not imagine that they would be doing. Absolutely. If their focus was on how to develop their communities.
Having a security background, I would expect you to concur with the incumbent President General Museveni on investing more in security than any other areas of the economy. The fact that Uganda is known for having at least the strongest military regionally.
Well, if you have a strong military, but you've got a growing population, and you are getting heavily indebted, and you are not able to pay your debt, for example, you are not able to feed your people, what will force do? Because you can't apply force on a permanent basis. It has a limit. So yes, you can invest in security, but you must also balance. Now, if you are able to establish good relations with all neighboring countries, and you don't feel any threat, basically what that means is that you would now divert resources that you would be heavily investing in security into other areas, into agriculture, into education, into health, into infrastructure, and other areas that will enable you to grow your economy and create employment, create jobs. That's the key factor. Yes, that does mean that you don't invest in security, but you don't invest in security when you are in a sense of going on a war footing, which seems to be the case right now. And some of the areas there can be cooperation, by the way, because if there is stability amongst the nations, like now there are 6 East African countries, if they all have good political, diplomatic relationships, then they can invest jointly in security. For example, if there is an external threat, the whole region. I mean, like in the case of Somalia needs to be stabilized. But they would all co-invest in infrastructure to ensure that they are protected from any other form of aggression or all forms of terrorism like has developed worldwide.
Yeah. In my journalism career, I went to Somalia and I wouldn't want to see that here. Absolutely. But let's move on from security, the state of security, and move on to economics. Look at unemployment, but also the debt burden of Uganda seems to be accumulating each and every day, to the point that today each Ugandan has a debt on their heads. If you did the math, you'll find that they have at least 1.2 million each Ugandan that is born, if you divide with the population. This debt burden is going to be inherited from one generation to another generation to another, because
inevitably.
What plans do you have,
Discipline.
apart from borrowing and borrowing?
Discipline.
In terms of funding your government, if you got in power?
Anybody who wants to effectively deal with the challenge that we do face, the first point of action is discipline. Discipline in terms of expenditure, government expenditure. As NT, the moment we take power, one of the things that we would have to look at is how to reduce expenditure in the area of governance. I mean, I look, for example, the expanding levels of parliament. Just to give one example. We now have close to 550 members of parliament. We're a country of 45 million people. India, which has 1.3 billion people, human beings,
and it's also
has got a parliament, the upper and lower house, 600 million. So we are short by 50 to get to where they are.
Yes.
India's population is about 30 times. No, actually 30, 35 times more than us.
More than Uganda's population.
And you can see how our parliaments, the numbers are almost getting close to where they are at. That doesn't make sense.
At all.
So there has to be a review. And a number of other areas in terms of the administration costs.
What has India done different that Uganda hasn't done? They're a developing country just like we are.
Well, I've not. It's not easy to compare India because of the huge landmass and the kind of population in comparative terms with Uganda. But there are a number of countries that we can compare easily in terms of population, in terms of, for example, South Korea. You know, and in the sense that at the time of, at least for us, independence in 1962, there are economies like Malaysia, which were more or less at par in terms of per capita income. All of us were lying within 300 million. South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore. Now, from 60s to now, you can see the leap or the difference that there is between what where they have reached in terms of per capita income and where we are at. Because we are at 800 plus, about $850. That is, if the whole economy of Uganda was distributed to every Ugandan as we are, each Ugandan now would get $850. Look at South Korea. South Korea now is around 25,000 United States dollars. Remember that we are together at 300.
Oh, yes.
Now they have grown to 25,000.
Very small.
We are at 850. Singapore, of course, for its case, it is much, much higher because they are around 45,000. I think Malaysia is, the last time I looked at it was around 10,000. But now it should be more than that because it's been a while since I looked at that. So one has to ask oneself, how can all these countries, which were the same level at which we are, been able to expand that fast? And we are still stuck. Again, it is discipline and focus. Because yes, democracy is important as we are building, but in areas that have made those leaps, some of them were not necessarily democratic. South Korea became democratized after a while. So as we grapple with the democratic questions, the issues of governance, we must also look at the issues of discipline. Because it doesn't matter whether you are a dictatorship, whether you are a democracy, if you don't have discipline in terms of managing national resources, the results will be the same. If you are corrupt, if you have got people who are in power who are corrupt, it means that you aren't going to put resources in the critical areas that will become a bedrock on the basis of which you can grow an economy on a sustained basis. Debt. If you borrow, one, if you are not disciplined, it means your processes for negotiations of loans will be weak. But the people who are going to be there are going to be looking for cuts, kickbacks, and that's what happens. That's why I find that in comparative terms, you look at a project in terms of roads, in terms of power, dams, and all that. You look at Uganda, you look at countries like Ethiopia where there's been a lot more discipline And you see a wide difference in terms of cost for the same capacity of, for example, power generation, or for the cost per kilometer of tarmac road. So again, that's a question of discipline. If you don't have discipline, it doesn't matter the political system. You'd be, you know, taking your country through raw deals, as we have seen. And the more that increases, and you are not able to focus resources in the productive areas, then that means even the debt that you are building, how will you repay if you don't have the discipline and the focus to invest in areas where there are going to be good returns in investment, and therefore use those returns to pay back debt? So it's a vicious cycle. At the end of the day, that's why those of us who are in the opposition really need to look beyond General Museveni. General Museveni is on the way out. Whether he likes it or not, whatever anybody thinks, we are just going to have change in this country. And therefore we have to think deeply. How do we break out of this 58 years vicious cycle? The only way we can break out is discipline and focus. And you know, high levels also of political consciousness, because it's what really leads us to understand the challenge that we are operating within. So we must invest more time in understanding our environment, in understanding our challenges, and designing solutions that will be effective in confronting those challenges and overcoming them. We must put aside emotion. Emotion doesn't work. We are operating in a situation where we are moving towards a crisis. If we don't do things effectively, the day this regime is out, which is just around the corner. As I've already indicated, 45 million people now, 25 years down the road, we will have 100 million people. Those are 100 million mouths to feed, 100 million lives to cater for in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of infrastructure. Kampala now, in some places, you spend 2.5 hours, 3 hours in a road jam. You know, Kampala was meant to be 500,000 people. Now, daytime is about 3 million people. So you can project, when we get about 100 million people, Kampala most likely will be 7, 8, 9, 10 million people. So if there is no discipline in terms of how we will build this city and expand it and have wider roads and have plans for how utilities will be moved, you see some of the areas.
General Muntu, a lot of people feel like the change promise has only been paid lip service. And perhaps that's the reason they're running out of patience. People, the populace.
Yes, the population are part of the problem.
Yes, they feel like all you've done is talk. Each election year, all you've done is talk about change,
as the Bible
and
says,
nothing is being
whatever
done.
a man sows, so shall he reap. Our population needs to understand that. However aggrieved they are, and justifiably so, because there are so many injustices, the corruption, the nepotism, the unfairness, the lack of transparency in the management of resources. Yes, that should make people really feel aggrieved. However, the solution or the response, we should not be emotional in our response. We should know that for us to shape the future in a way that will be able to cater for our needs, to cater for our interests as a people, that the type of people, the nature of politicians that we should go in next must be those who have got a capability to handle those challenges. Don't be emotional. These are issues that are critical, you know. So, being aggrieved and becoming emotional, or at times becoming almost careless in the manner in which we want to respond to these challenges, will affect us in the future. I mean, we've been going through that. It's been a vicious cycle. 62 until now. We have had so many changes in government, yes. But the results have been similar. Same character, same characteristics. Corruption,
Does that mean the systems in the opposition parties are not ready, according to you?
Come again?
Does that mean that the arrangement in terms of structures and systems in the opposition parties are not ready to take power? We
must keep working on that. What is a little bit scary is the debate. You hear on radio, you read in papers, you read in follow talk shows, and the focus is the immediate challenge, which is important because there's no group that is going to manage power better unless the one which is in is removed first. But see, the two must be moved together.
Exactly.
Building capacity to remove the current regime, but simultaneously creating the capability to manage power better. Now, some people seem to be sucked into the removal, not in the management of power thereafter.
Yes.
I can tell you, if we don't focus a lot on that, we may not be able to break out of this vicious cycle.
Muntu, do you
so we can just have a new group coming in, but which simply in culture, in character, could just do the same things
or even
the ones who are in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Muntu, do you see ANT take power 2021?
It's not out of our reach, and that's what we are focused on.
But you're running out of time.
No, as Harold Wilson, the former Prime Minister of the UK, said, a week is too long in politics. Things happen. You know, there's a shift which is happening right now as we speak in the country. I notice it, I feel it, and we are working, doing everything humanly possible to exploit that situation. And I believe by God's grace we'll be able to take power.
Back to our economic debate. What is ANT's silver bullet to the economic predicament of unemployment today?
Well, grow the economy. Because the moment you grow the economy, then you create jobs. Yeah, there's no shortcut.
What's the silver bullet? Be very explicit on this.
Yes.
What's the silver bullet that President Muntu, the president of the Alliance for National Transformation, has to solve unemployment as an economic predicament?
First, be disciplined in terms of the people who are going to be put in key positions of management. Two, stamp out corruption, stop the hemorrhage, reinvest those resources on top of the resources that you're able to get through revenue collections. Then invest in agriculture, invest in education, invest in health, because you need skilled manpower, healthy manpower, deploy them well. Create an environment in which those who are in trade, those who are in manufacturing thrive. And through that, you create jobs. There are no shortcuts. Yes.
Okay. So if your economic, in terms of solving unemployment, stands at that level, when you look at...
Because unemployment, if you have got a growing economy, you have invested in agriculture, you have put in place the necessary infrastructure for those who have got the inclinations or the entrepreneurial skills to invest in agro-processing, in other manufacturing concerns, and then also in the service sector. The more you have got an expanding economy, you'll have an expanding service sector. It creates employment. You invest in agriculture, it creates employment. You invest in in manufacturing, you create employment. Government cannot go in. It is the smallest employer. It puts in place the necessary environment. It puts in place the necessary tax infrastructure to encourage people to go into different investments. And therefore, the moment they grow their businesses, the moment they expand, you also expand the capacity to employ. I don't see any other route that you can use.
COVID-19 has taught us
yes.
that dependence on external economic outlook does not work on macroeconomics basis, but rather build internal economic systems for sustainability. Looking at the different sectors like ICT, innovation and science, what areas are you looking at emphasizing in making sure that the economy grows internally and we are not dependent on anyone else outside, like funds and International Monetary Fund, World Bank? What are you working internally to see that the economy has the muscle that is necessary to sustain us through disasters like we've witnessed, the one of the pandemic, COVID-19?
Well, first, there is There are interlinkages. One, you invest in agriculture, is the largest employer as we speak. That's where 70% of the population is. You put in place the necessary policy frameworks for those who want to invest in industries, to invest in industries. And you also create an environment in which the Ugandan population, first skilling manpower, ensuring that they are healthy, and also conducive, a conducive atmosphere in which they can engage in whatever entrepreneurial activities they would want to invest in. And that becomes part of the growth on a sustained basis of an economic system. Once you have got a population which is able to get good returns on the investments that they make, that means that they'll be able to buy the products from your own factories. And also you have to work on the integration of the regional markets. Once you have that, then you'll be able to sustain your own economies even if there are problems on the outside, as we currently do face. That needs to be the focus.
A synergy in terms.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because you also have to work on the internal infrastructure, in terms of roads, in terms of power. You have got to work on the current issue of the expensive power tariffs. You also have to work on provision of water, the transportation networks, to ensure that whatever is produced can be moved around easily, and also to ensure that it impacts in terms of bringing down the cost of transportation. Because we have got the highest charges, for example, from Mombasa to Kampala. A container for, cost for a container, 20 foot or 40 foot, from Mombasa or Dar es Salaam to Kampala is more expensive than shipping it from Europe to here, or from China to here. So that means there is a problem that needs to be looked at in that regard, in terms of lowering the cost of internal transportation.
General Muntu, I don't know, do you believe in the mafia syndicate that everyone else is crying out and crying foul of in the current government? Do you believe that there is a mafia hand, the invisible hand that everyone talks about? And what is your strategy in making sure that you curtail the mafia invisible hand? If you got into power, I don't know if it's the one that is orchestrating all the corruption that we're witnessing today.
It's an acknowledged fact, because I think so far on record there are about 3 or 4 ministers that have come out and said there is a mafia that is running after them. That means there is a mafia, there is no doubt about that. President Museveni himself has publicly acknowledged that there is corruption, and even I think, I don't remember how many months back, when he demonstrated in public, which basically was an acknowledgement that he had failed in managing it, because if you are the president of the country and you demonstrate on an issue like that, when you are the one who has got the instruments of power that can deal with it, it just basically means that you have thrown in the towel. You have simply said that I can't manage this. Corruption is very, very, very easy to manage, because it starts from the top. The moment you have got whoever the occupant of the State House would be, if he or she is disciplined and not corrupt, and they deliberately appoint cabinet ministers who are not corrupt, and they review the public service and put in people at the control points, the permanent secretaries, the commissioners, and they also put in place people who are not corrupt in managing the parastatal organizations or the authorities. In 5 years, you'll have stamped out corruption. People fear going to prison. Right now, corruption is rampant because people know that they will steal and go with it. Why? Because they have links with those who are in power. Those who are in power cannot clamp down on it because it is part of the machinery that enables them to hang on to power. So there's no way they can knock the pillars from below them, the pillars that hold them up. So it's a catch-22 for them. Even if they had the desire to stamp out corruption, they simply are not capable. They just can't stamp it out. So any group that wants to stamp out corruption, one, they must themselves not be corrupt. There's no way you can fight corruption if you're corrupt yourself.
Absolutely.
And again, that's why we must remove emotion out of politics. Let me repeat what I've said before. The Bible says that as whatever a man sows, so shall he reap. So if people want corruption to be stamped out, they had better look for LOC3 chairperson, LOC5 chairpersons, members of parliament, and the president who are not corrupt. If you elect people who are corrupt and then you expect that corruption will be eliminated, you are just simply daydreaming.
Absolutely. General Muntu, I'll dedicate the last few minutes that we have to conclude this talk show to you, to speak to your followers and those that subscribe to the Alliance for National Transformation. That come 2021, you will get into power, and this is your campaign strategy. Look in the camera and talk to the people.
Our focus as Alliance for National Transformation is on encouraging and attracting men and women of integrity. That's why you start. We need a concentration of men and women of integrity in the Alliance for National Transformation, so that for the first time, we can have those who are not corrupt become the dominant force in a political grouping. We've never had that. We've had honest men and women in this country, but they have always been at the margins because they've always been in a minority in politics. The only solution, men and women who have integrity out there, don't keep out there in the shadows complaining. Get at the center of the management of politics in this country. There are no shortcuts. Nature hates vacuums. You don't come in, the crooks will remain in there. They'll come more and more, as we see. And then the outcomes is as we should expect. You sow bitter fruit, a seed of a bitter fruit, you reap a bitter fruit. You can't go and reap a sweet fruit from a tree of a bitter fruit. You simply can't do that. We want to change the nature of politics in this country. We want to shape the future to become better. What matters? The character of the men and women who are going to be in governance. There are no shortcuts, period.
Thank you very much, retired Major General Gregory Mugisha Muntu Oyera, for speaking to the viewers of ACE TV. My name is Elijah Tudiagumanawe, and it's been a great honor. Life is so beautiful, ain't it? Having a conversation with a retired Major General in studio like this, a chit-chat. Who knew that would be? Thank you very much for honoring our invitation, Major General, retired at that. You'll allow me to close this particular talk show here. Hope you enjoyed it. And you can keep with the conversation on all our digital platforms. That's on Twitter at AceTV Uganda, Facebook at AceTV Uganda. My personal Twitter handle are at Elijah Tudia, and on Facebook, Elijah Tudiagumanawe. Keep it AceTV.